Part 32. Angel must be hungry. Back at it again. I'm getting there. Almost there. I think. I don't know how long this actually ended up being. The gray light from outside poked through my window and slapped me in the face, reminding me that hiding in my dreams would only last so long. I tried to tune out the light, but it was no use, even after throwing a pillow over my head. I slowly sat up only to be hit by the worst migraine I had in a long time. Between that and my sore soul and eyes, this morning would be worse than waking up after a night of drinking the Apple family cider. I wanted to lay back down on the couch and will my headache away, but I knew I had work to do. My animals needed feeding, despite how sick I felt at that moment. I slowly pushed myself off the couch, and while walking outside, glanced at myself in the mirror, almost cringing at the sight. My pink mane was tangled and sticking up in certain areas. I knew maybe I could ask Angel or something to brush my hair, but not right now. He was probably starving. Once outside, I grabbed the bag of feed and headed over to my kitchen coop and backyard where all my little critters seemed to gather. Putting on my best fake smile and clearing my throat, I dusted the ground with the feed that every pony seemed to enjoy, or at least tolerate. But there was one animal I knew wouldn't even tolerate this bland mixture. "Oh, Angel," I called out to him. Of course, he didn't come, so I fluttered in the air, flying over to his little house. "Angel, who's a hungry baby?" I cooed in my best baby voice, hoping he'd hop out of his little hut happily. Still nothing. Panic set in at this point as I dashed over and peered into his hut. It seemed empty, but some chewed up apple cores made me suspect he was here recently. My breathing speed increased as I felt a panicked lump in my throat form. "Angel? Angel?" I called, panicking. I rushed over back to my treehouse, practically running despite being in the air as I flew. I heard a chuckle near my front door, and it sounded familiar. I felt fear and anxiety sink in as I flew faster and faster. Finally arriving, I sighed in relief when I saw the white little fluff ball hopping up and down. However, my relief quickly escaped as I saw a dark stallion standing in front of the rabbit. "Hey, would you cut it out?" he snapped in annoyance. I could see not a playful look in his eyes, more of an annoyed look. Once those green eyes settled on me, he seemed to adjust his facial expression almost instantly and grinned. I felt myself shudder with both anticipation and fear. "Oh, hey there, Fluttershy," he said, placing his hoof on Angel's head. "Is this little guy yours?" he asked, releasing his hoof as Angel frantically hopped over to me and hid behind my foreleg. I nodded nervously. "Yeah, this is Angel." My eyes lowered a bit in suspicion as I tilted my head. "He's one of my closest companions." I could feel Angel flailing about behind me, obviously upset at what Red Robin had been doing. I really wasn't in the mood to fight, so I simply picked Angel up and placed him on my back. "He wasn't bothering you, was he?" I asked Red. Red Robin adjusted himself and cleared his throat, puffing his chest out. "Huh? Him? Nah, he's quite the cutie pie," he said through his teeth. It didn't take a genius to see that he wasn't too thrilled by Angel. However, not many ponies liked the bunny either. "I was just gonna feed him. Would you maybe like to join me?" I didn't want to let either Angel or Red out of my sight. I didn't want them to fight, or Red to interact with my other animals. Red Robin hesitated at first, but shrugged. "Sure, I don't mind," he said, trotting closely next to me. I could feel Angel grow restless behind me as I walked to where I kept all my vegetables. As we trotted along, I tried to fight sleep, but it seemed despite how quickly I passed out last night, I was still tired. Probably this headache. As I felt myself zone out, I heard a blood-curdling scream, and my back felt slightly lighter than before. I whisked around to see Red Robin bucking about angrily as Angel chewed relentlessly on his ear. My jaw dropped, and I heard myself let out a squeak as I stood motionless for a few moments, unsure of what to do. Angel normally had a good judge of character, but to be this mean to Red Robin, this stallion couldn't be that bad, could he? Angel must be hungry, I said, nervously giggling. This time, it didn't seem Red was too happy about the way things turned out. I guess so, he said, shaking his head about. This time I felt I needed to intervene. He was going to hurt both himself and Angel at this point. I ran over, grabbing Angel's food with my mouth and prying him off of Red, tossing Angel on my back and wrapping him up in my wings. I turned to see blood dripping down Red's ear, and his once cool and flirtatious eyes took on a red-hot, fiery rage. His teeth were showing, and he almost looked like an angry timberwolf. Gritting his teeth, he shot daggers at Angel, who I assumed glared angrily back at the bleeding Pegasus. "Might want to keep that thing on a leash, eh?" he hissed. I turned back to face Angel, who was still giving this guy dirty looks. Biting my bottom lip, I kneeled down and slipped Angel off my back. "Maybe it's time you go back to your hut, Angel. I'll feed you later," I said in a hushed voice. The tiny bunny folded his arms but listened to me and darted back toward his hut. I trotted over to Red, examining his ear. "Let me patch that up for you," I said with a shrug. Red turned to me, the fire in his eyes cooling, and he blinked a couple times before nodding. "Okay, that'd be nice." Once I wrapped the wound around his ear in gauze and bandages, he seemed to calm down almost instantly. Maybe his ego forgot he was attacked by a rabbit 5 times smaller than himself. "I'm telling you, Fluttershy," he went on, "being on tour and seeing all of Equestria, no, all of the world is truly amazing. You see things beyond your wildest dreams." He fell backward on my couch and smiled at me. "It'd be great if you accompanied me." I turned and washed the bloodied rags I used to dry his wound and closed my eyes. "I don't know, Red Robin," I muttered. "I have a lot of responsibilities here." I heard a scoff. "What, you mean those flea-ridden animals? I mean, your little friends?" he said, correcting himself. I heard his hoof steps approach me, and he placed a wing on my shoulder. I flinched a bit, but turned my eyes up toward him. "Aren't you ready to follow your dreams?" he said in a soft voice. I shrugged and backed away a bit. I don't know. This was always my dream, caring for animals." He laughed. "In this house? In Ponyville? Don't you want to care for more than just goats and cows? And rabbits?" He backed away, lifting his hooves in the air for effect. "How about a dragon? Or a griffin? Or exotic animals and creatures you've only read about in storybooks? Like, none of the animals Fluttershy has seem to be able to talk, like that one cow. But the dragons and griffins talk, so it'd be weird. But whatever." He asked me, and immediately words like exotic and dragons and griffins and animals began to buzz in my head like a million Parasprites. Red Robin trotted over to me again, that same cool grin on his face. "All I'm saying is, why limit yourself to Ponyville?" He practically whispered in my ear, seducing me with ideas of being one of the greatest animal caretakers in all the land. I remained silent, unsure of what excuse I could make. "But if I do go with... who will care for my animals?" I asked, frowning at the idea of my lovelies starving. "Already taken care of," he said almost instantly. I'll send over 5 ponies over every day to check on them, feed them, clean their homes, even the little demon rabbit," he assured me, wrapping his foreleg around me. I cringed again at his touch, but tried to hide it better this time. He was doing me a huge favor. Red Robin leaned in, whispering in my ear, "Come with me, and I'll make sure you get into the finest vet school in Equestria." I remained motionless until I pushed him off me and blinked my cyan eyes at him. "And what is the catch?" I asked hesitantly. He paused before bursting into an uproar of laughter. "Catch? Oh, silly Fluttershy. There is no catch. Just keep me company whenever I'm not singing and dancing for my fans." Again, hesitation set in. When he said, "keep me company," did he mean just sit and talk, or something else? I bit my bottom lip, knowing I couldn't turn an offer like this down. A free term at the best vet college in Equestria. How could I say no? Just Give me some time to get my things together, and I'll go, I said, trying to hide the hesitation in my voice. His mouth contorted into that same cool smile, except his eyes seemed to show a bit more of a crazed look. Good. You made the right choice. He trotted over to the door, already awaiting a carriage to take him off. I'll be back at around, say, 8 o'clock. I trust you'll make the necessary arrangements until then? He asked. Before I could answer, he disappeared into his carriage as it rode down the path away from my house. I released a captive sigh and closed the door. What would I say to all my friends? To Angel, to Rarity, and Twilight, and Pinky, and Applejack, and... I shut my eyes tightly. Well, I'm following my dream, I whispered, trying to fight back tears. I hope you do the same, or this was all for nothing. I picked myself up and began to trot upstairs to pack my bags. Then I would go off to say goodbye to my friends. Part 33. What do you call this? Once Red Robin had been gone for a while, I was finally able to be with my thoughts. What had just happened? Did I really agree to go on tour with him in exchange for a scholarship at the best vet school in Equestria? The Canterlot Academy of Veterinary Care. Dash was the only pony who knew I wanted to go there. I'm sure every pony else in our group knew as well, but I didn't go blathering on about my dreams. Not that it's a bad thing, but I was much more conservative about that kind of stuff. My mind drifted back to the countless talks I've had with Rainbow Dash about it, about my dream of being one of the best vets around. You can do it, Shy. Listen, don't hold back for any pony, got it? Not for all of our friends or your pets here, or even me. If you see something, just go for it. No pony encouraged me like she did before. Sure, Red Robin was offering to let me go to that school for free, but the cost was to travel with him and be on tour. You'd think this would be every mare's dream, right? Traveling alongside with a pop star? Well, not if you're as shy as I am. I sighed and closed my suitcase. What little clothing I owned was jammed in there. I'm sure I would get more along the way. I wanted so desperately to say goodbye to my animals, but I knew that would be a bad idea. Same with my friends. I decided maybe I'd talk to Rarity about it. Surely she'd talk me out of this decision. God damn it, Rarity. Coco was right. Let me go back to doing Rarity's voice. This is the toughest one, to get the mannerisms right, you know? Darling, you are the luckiest pony in Equestria right now. You must go. You simply must, squealed Rarity, hopping around her boutique like an excited schoolgirl. I groaned. This was not the answer I expected from her. I rubbed my foreleg with my hoof, glancing over at her. Oh, you don't think it's a bad idea? Rarity paused from her hopping and looked back at me, tilting her head. She looked at me like I just asked her what the meaning of life was, utterly confused. She let out a giggle-like snort and cantered over to me, throwing her foreleg around me in an embrace. Well, it certainly isn't going to happen again. You get a chance to go to the best vet school in the land, and the only price you have to pay is travel alongside one of the hippest pop stars around right now? Sounds like a sweet deal to me, she said, pulling away, a confident smile on her face. I opened my mouth to speak, but was cut out immediately by more Rarity ramblings. Rarity ramblings. True, I will miss you, but if he told you he'd take care of your animals for you, then there isn't really much else to do except be whisked away by your Prince Charming. She let out a whine now, flipping her gorgeous purple curls out of her eyes. You are so lucky. You know I'd give up my entire boutique just to be in your place. Well, no, not really. Maybe my secret stash of diamonds, sure. She walked back over to her sewing machine and continued working on another fantastic project of hers. My eyes trailed down to my hooves. I knew Twilight would disagree, as would Applejack. Pinky would probably have the same reaction as Rarity, I'm sure. I should have gone to Twilight or Applejack. So why didn't I? Was it because deep down I really did want this? And accepting his offer in exchange for keeping him company, this made me no better than I was shaken for my thoughts. What? I was shaken from my thoughts when Rarity walked over to me, playing with my pink mane. Would you like me to doll you up a bit before you go? She asked, trying to fluff it up or something. She was obviously displeased with it. I stepped back, shaking my head. No. If Red Robin wants me so bad, he'll get the real me, I said, extending my wings. Rarity smiled at me genuinely, and I could see a few tears forming in her eyes. She trotted over to me, throwing me in a tight hug. And you'd think Rarity would realize, oh, he wants that. Maybe it's not a good idea. You best get going soon then, right, hun? She asked, rubbing the back of my head. I felt tears form in my eyes too, as I shut them tightly, trying to fight them back. I had to be strong. This was my dream I was following now. Of course, Rarity. It was silent for a moment before I spoke again. What about the others? I can't break the news to them. I'll handle it, whispered Rarity before pulling away. However, her smile faded when she looked at my face. My eyes were soaked by this point, and I couldn't keep in the crying any longer. Rarity ran back over to me, throwing me in another tight hug. I know. I miss her too, she said. We all do. It's my fault, I cried into Rarity's shoulder. She's gone, and it's all my fault, and you all hate me now. Rarity hugged me tighter, shaking her head. No, don't you dare blame yourself. None of us blame you, darling, she said, pulling away from me, putting her hooves on my shoulders. Now, you don't want him to see you crying like this. You have got to put on your best face, chimed Rarity, wiping her eyes as if trying to erase the fact that she had been crying with me, her eyeliner running down her cheeks. I smiled at Rarity's futile attempt to wipe away her tears. Okay, Rarity. Thank you for everything. Rarity shook her head, smiling. I mean, the rest of us in Ponyville found our little niche, but you and Rainbow Dash. Applejack has her apple farm, Pinkie has Sugar Cube Corner, Twilight in her library and studies, and me with, well, she threw her forelegs in the air a bit at the boutique. But you two had different places to be. Her smile turned a bit sad now. It's bittersweet that you both found love in each other, though. All it did was hold you both back, she said in a sad voice. I sighed. In a way, she was right. Her and I together, the familiarity of it all, I knew ending it was right. Maybe not now, but maybe not in a few weeks, but in the long run, it was the right thing to do. I picked up my suitcase in my mouth and gave Rarity one last smile. She waved and lowered her head, keeping her blue eyes on me. Remember, right? I giggled between the suitcase handle and nodded before opening the door. I walked only a few meters before I was blinded by multiple flashing lights. Cameras shoved in my face and voices I couldn't even recognize, shouting questions I couldn't understand at me. I tried to shield my face with my forelegs, but it was no good. The bright, almost cruel flashes broke through and blinded me instantly. I could see nothing but spots everywhere. I turned until I felt Red Robin drop down next to me. I thought he was going to take me away, but instead he threw his arm around me, giving a big smile to the cameras. Well, we have to get you a pair of sunglasses to block these flashes, he seemed to say, almost laughing. I couldn't believe it. He was having the time of his life while I was having the worst anxiety attack of my life. I wanted to yell at him. I wanted to say something, but each word was cut off by my throat closing up. I just wanted this nightmare to be over. So this is your new girlfriend? Called one of the reporters. Red Robin let out a cocky chuckle and flashed a big smile. I'm not saying she isn't, but he threw his wing around me and pulled me into his uncomfortable, heavy half-armed hug tighter. What do you call this? Can these reporters register normal pony emotions like the rest of us can? I doubted it, because there was no way they were able to ignore the sheer horror on my face so easily like this unless they were unfeeling vultures. Part 34. Why'd you bring me him? In my office, I moved pencils around with my hoof, watching them roll down only to have me catch it. It didn't take long for me to climb the ranks with the Wonderbolts. In a span of over a year, I was in the same position as Sorena's Spitfire. I looked out my window, seeing her drilling the new recruits. Can't say we saw this many new faces before without Gilda's help. Despite our ranks, Gilda always held top command. She would say I was a right Talon mare, but that only made me feel like all my hard work went to nothing if she was more important than us. I sighed, tapping my hoof on the floor anxiously. She told me she had a surprise for me, and my stomach was doing all sorts of flips as each passing second hit me with more intense waves of anticipation and anxiety. If you're wondering why I'm nervous, yes, it is because I am suspecting only my wildest fantasies that Gilda has somehow brought her to join us, or something along the lines of Fluttershy. It had been a year, and I had not heard from her at all. No letters, nothing. Pinkie Pie and the girls wrote to me, and I would come to Ponyville to visit, but there was no Fluttershy. I didn't ask, and they didn't tell. It was a mutual thing. They didn't want to tell me, and I certainly did not want to know. Ignorance is bliss, right? Finally, the door opened, and it was only Cloudy, pretending to sweep. I rolled my eyes with a slight smile. Yeesh, haven't you heard a knocking? I asked, resting my head on my hooves. She looked up for only a second, raising an eyebrow. You look a bit uptight through the window. I figured it was because your office was a bit dusty, she said, laughing. Thought I'd come by and clean it up. Cloudy continued to go about sweeping, taking extra special care, and taking her sweet-ass time. She knew how to take my mind off things, if only for a second. I rolled my eyes. Thanks, but you know why I'm like this, I said, biting my bottom lip. I got up from my chair and strolled over to the window, looking at the new ponies, their faces contorted in pain, panting heavily. I could see Soren and Spitfire urging them on, screaming at each passing pony to go, go, go. I shook my head and smiled. I remember when that was me. I knew the ponies with the determination on their faces would make it. I was lost in my thoughts of the past before Cloudy spoke up. I don't think it's fair of Gilda to tell you she has something for you and completely brush off what it could be, she grumbled. Taking out her duster now and began working on the bookshelves, I turned to her, shrugging. Yeah, she likes keeping me on edge, I guess, I said with a small smile. Besides, it can't be that bad, can it? My heart skipped a beat when I saw Gilda through my window, and she had her wing over a pony. I began to panic. I knew those weren't her colors, but my mind likes to torture me, and I assumed it was her. I rushed over near to the door, and then backed up a bit, adjusting myself and standing upright. Cloudy immediately ceased her dusting and walked out the door, before giving me one last glance. She despised Gilda and avoided her as much as possible. I wish I had the luxury to run away from her. As soon as I saw Gilda walk to the door, I stood upright, giving her a salute. Why I gave a salute to a griffin with absolutely no rank was beyond me, but she commanded it. At ease, she said, waving her talon at me. My heart pounded in my chest, and I could hear it through my ears. Nevertheless, I never moved from my stance. What was the important surprise he had, Gilda? I asked flatly, looking dead at her. Gilda plopped down, still looking gigantic though, and relaxed her wings. Out from behind her came a scrawny-looking Pegasus with a red coat and a golden mane. He looked around my office with an almost unimpressed, dull expression. This is Maroon Fly, she said, lowering her golden eyes to meet mine. I didn't try to hide the disappointment, yet relief in my tired eyes, as I brought my hoof to my chin. Why'd you bring me him? I asked in a monotone drawl. Gilda opened her beak to speak, but the colt spoke up. Do you even know who I am? His tone condescending, and as his green eyes narrowed at me. I thought you were going to teach this one some manners, Gilda, he said sarcastically. Gilda cringed, but eased up and let out a smile. Yeah, she's a feisty one. And they both shared a mean laugh. By this point, I was steaming, and as I slammed my hoof down. Pardon me, but do you even know who you're talking to? I barked, marching right toward his face. My face, literally inches from his, stared down at the boy. I don't know, and I don't care who you are. Any pony who talks like that to a commanding officer around here gets 500 laps around the track. Do I make myself clear? Gilda began to instinctively put her wing between us and slowly pushed me away. Not this one. His brother paid us quite a pretty bit to get him in here, and he's already graduated in a Wonderbolt. You can talk to him like you talk to Spitfire or Soren, she said, looking down at the now smug-looking Pegasus. My jaw dropped. You mean I had to work my flank off to get to where I am, and he just passes through basic training and already has a rank among us? Just like that? I gasped, and Gilda nodded. I know it's a lot for you to wrap your head around, but my brother is an important pony, and what he wants, he gets. He wanted his precious brother to finally earn his cutie mark, so I came here for some hard work and discipline. Maroon Fly strolled about my office as if he owned it, then turned to me, shrugging. But, you know, hard work and all isn't really my thing. You understand, don't you? He said with a smile. I stormed in front of him, slamming my hooves on the ground. At least in this office, you will be treated as you are, some pony who cheated their way through the academy just because their brother is someone important. And Gilda, we need to talk. Now, I hissed, pointing my hoof at her. I have yelled at her before, but this time I was livid. Maroon stood there casually before I turned my head to him, slapping him on the rear. Alone. Get out of my sight, Parasprite. Alone. Get out of my sight. I'm sorry, I can't handle this. Story's getting weird. Alone. Get out of my sight, Parasprite. I hissed. The pony merely narrowed his eyes and trotted out. Just wait until my brother hears about how I've been treated. This is ridiculous. He walked over by Gilda. I'll be outside, but I do hope you teach this one some manners. And with that, he was out. It was just me and the griffin. I let the air cool down for a few seconds before letting out a sigh, beginning to speak. Gilda, that is wrong on all levels. And when Spitfire and Soren find out you let a pony bribe you? Spitfire and Soren know, she said flatly, preening her feathers. I paused, my ears lowering. What? I choked out. They know, but unlike you, they respect their manager and know they could get their rank ripped right from their shirt if they spoke up against me. She slowly walked over to me, looking down at my badges and pins. And you know if we weren't together, you'd be back down to a basic recruit like the rest of them, if not expelled from the academy, she said in a menacing tone. I narrowed my eyes at her, trying to fight back tears. Who in Equestria is his brother anyway? I barked, demanding an answer. Who is he where he has enough money to pay this maroon fly character's way through flight school? Just saying that out loud filled me with rage. Gilda scratched her talon on the floor. If you don't know Maroon Fly, you certainly know his brother. Ever hear of Red Robin? My ears lowered. Yeah, I said with bile in my voice. We went to flight school together. He was a bigger show-off and egomaniac than me. And now just because he can sing and fly at the same time, he's famous. So what? It took me a minute, but then my eyes widened. I slowly turned to her. Are you saying that his brother is... Gilda nodded slowly. Yes, we are in the midst of a celebrity, so be on your best behavior, she said, running her cold talon through my mane. I slowly cringed away, turning away from her. But Gilda, bribery? We are so above that. So above that, I said weakly, although I shouldn't be surprised. This is Gilda we're talking about. She let out a crow as she flapped her feathers a bit in an aggravated fashion. I did it for the bolts. I did it for us. Don't you know how many bits we got out of this? We have enough to recruit just as many ponies, she said. Not only can we be the best damn performers in Equestria, we can be the best defenders in the world. She raised her talon, scratching her chest. Don't you want that for this? Or is your selfish childhood rivalry really going to cloud your judgment? Angrily, I turned to her, narrowing my purple eyes. I stared into her gold ones. I swear, as my eyes got duller, her eyes got more bright with ambition. Their flames burned through my icy wall quickly. I didn't want to argue with her right now. I was just fed up with the corruption. If you keep letting ponies buy their way in, we won't have a fighting force. We will have a band of rich, snotty brats who think they can do whatever they want. Gilda's face relaxed and nodded. You know, you're right, Dash, she said. My ears perked up and I felt myself smile. You think so? Gilda nodded. Yeah, I think only the really rich should join the Wonderbolts. Think of the money we could make. Then she threw her head back and let out that scary bird laugh she does. It was mixed in with squawks and throaty chuckles. She leaned down and kissed me on the cheek, which sent a shiver down my spine. You're a funny one, Dash. I'm only teasing. She walked over to the door, letting herself out. Or am I? She gave me that jack-o'-lantern smile and waved goodbye before walking out, shutting the door behind her. I stood in the silence of my office and allowed the dim light to comfort me. I slowly walked back over to my desk and slid down into my chair, sighing. That bird brought so much stress on me. Every time I talked to her, it was as if my body was in fight or flight mode. And as much as I wanted to just fly, my pride made it in fight mode. I looked in my drawer and dropped 2 seltzer tablets in a glass of water and watched them sizzle to calm my stomach. I'd go out and join Soren and Spitfire in a moment and to have a talk with them. There was no way they were okay with this. At least not Spitfire. She was such a powerful mare, and it's as Gilda is trying to strip Onipony here of their self-confidence. I had held on to mine, barely, but it was there. I took a small sip of my seltzer water when I knew I'd be at peace for a few moments, and let myself relax. My wings fell at my sides, and I rested my head on my desk. Among all my files, all my inspirational pictures and frames, and all the other knickknacks on my desk, I had but one hidden. I lifted pages of my large calendar and lifted away month after month after month until I got to last year. This time last year, I was still crying every night over that mare from Ponyville. Now I don't even cry at all unless it's something Gilda does. I can already tell this maroon fly colt and I won't get along, but I didn't want to think about that right now. I'll worry about tomorrow. Part 35. This Isn't Us. I laid in bed relentlessly, staring at my ceiling. My hooves began to shake nervously as my ceiling fan above me spun round and round. I was mostly sleepless due to anger and frustration. It was as if my authority was being overlooked, glanced over. Spitfire and Soren, while extremely agitated, were passive about it around Gilda. They loved the bolts, and loved what the publicity of a celebrity student would bring to us. Definitely more money. We would have been able to expand a great amount within the last few months, but something about it seemed almost dishonest. I sighed and massaged my temples with my hooves. No pony listened to me, it seemed. This wasn't what we were about. Celebrity handouts and publicity. We were an elite group of performers for royalty, but it seemed that it's turning it more into this exploitable band of flyers. As sleep grew ever more difficult, I gave into my wakefulness and hopped out of bed. Gently opening my door, I trotted down the dark hallway. There were a few nightlights lighting the way, but it was difficult to see. As I made my way down into the main relaxation room, I looked at our bulletin board. It was hard to see at first, but I squinted my eyes in the dark. Was it missing? I put my hoof to where it was and felt paper instead, a large plastic-like paper. Huh? I had no idea what it could be until some pony placed a candlestick under it, illuminating what the poster was. On it was a bird, eagle-like looking symbol. Slapped on it were large words saying, "One night." I was utterly confused. I turned to see who had the candlestick, and it was Cloudy. "Do you have any idea who's responsible for this?" I asked her in a hushed tone. She shook her head, shrugging. "If I knew, I'd tell you, but I don't have any idea," she said, looking at me, her tired eyes looking almost as tired as mine did. "Well, I'm going to find out." I made no attempt to keep my voice down. "Where are our workout schedules? Our nutrition schedules?" My anger began to rise. "Where is our Wonderbolt's oath?" I breathed heavily, trying to calm myself down to no avail. Cloudy looked at me. I could tell there was anger behind those tired eyes, but it seemed listless, numb almost. "Ask Gilda," she said simply. I turned to her, my jaw gaping open. I figured she'd be up to this. What is she trying to tell me with this poster? What does it even mean? I squinted over closer at the poster, but it seemed so vague. Just one night. Obviously it was an advertisement. No date, no nothing. This was obviously meant for something certain ponies would know about. "Did you talk to Soren and Spitfire?" she asked, tilting her head. I nodded slowly. "Well, yeah, but it's useless if they don't want to act on it." I let out a heavy groan and fell backwards on the wall, sliding down it and resting my head against it. "They're just too afraid. Gilda's got their name legally bound to the bolts. She could kick us out so fast." Cloudy looked at me, her dull eyes showing a small spark, and her mouth hung open slightly. "Even ponies who have been in the bolts for years, like Soren and Spitfire, could be kicked out? Just like that?" she whispered. I looked up at her. "Yeah, isn't that awful? We gotta do something about it." I stood up, looking at Cloudy, who looked right back. This isn't us. If Gilda's giving us some obscure message with this poster we are all supposed to discover when we wake up is not right. This isn't Equestria's top model. We deserve to know where and for whom we are performing for. My rant seemed to ring on the wrong pony's ears. Cloudy looked at me, curving her mouth downward. You're talking to the wrong pony, hon, she said simply. You, Soren, Spitfire, and Gilda need to have a meeting about this. I laughed. Yeah, that would never happen. Soren and Spitfire will nod it off. They like the publicity we are getting for it. They wouldn't mind performing at some snobby singer's concert if it meant more bits. Cloudy opened her mouth to speak, then paused momentarily. She remained silent before looking back at the poster. Red Robin, she said out loud. My ears perked up immediately as I scrambled over to the poster, examining it thoroughly. What? Where? Where did you see that? I asked her in a frantic voice, my eyes scanning every inch. She chuckled at me, much to my disdain, and lifted a corner of the poster up. It seemed to have a small note written on it. You bolts are cordially invited to perform at my next concert. Thanks to my brother, you are opening yourselves up to royalty that isn't thousands of years old. Red Robin. I was fuming. Did he try to insult us? The princess? Did he think he was being funny right now? Damn fool hasn't changed a bit. I growled under my breath. I am no pony's backup dancer, I hissed under my breath, turning to Cloudy, who seemed to only look at me with confusion. Dash, as much as I hate to see the bolts sold out like that, this will be good for us. She seemed like she had to correct herself, as if saying us was a mistake. For you guys, she said, frantically nodding. My ears lowered slightly. Okay. Cloudy smirked slightly. Well, you've performed at concerts with the bolts before. Why is this one bothering you so much? She asked in a hushed voice. I shook my head. I don't know. I looked at the shadows flicker and dance in the candle's light. Of course I remembered Fluttershy tell me that it was her childhood crush. Yeah, I'm successful, but I'm no singer. I'm no smooth-talking, seductive stallion. Why did it bother me? It's not like I've even talked about Fluttershy a year. Rainbow? Cloudy's voice pierced my thoughts, and she looked at me, waiting for an answer. I opened my mouth, unsure of what to say before Cloudy waved her hoof. You're tired. Get some sleep, okay? She said, picking up the candlestick holder in her mouth before giving me one final wave before trotting off to her room. I let out a sigh of relief as she went, giving her a small smile. Once I saw the light disappear, I sat in the dark, watching the sun try desperately to peek over the clouds, letting every pony know it would soon be time to wake up. It's been a year. Why am I not over this pony yet? Why is it so easy to live my life without my other friends back home, but not Fluttershy? It can't be because I shook my head again, curling up in a ball on the floor as I watched a dim gray light fill the room. Surely I'm over her. You don't still hold feelings for some pony you haven't seen or heard from for over a year. You just don't. So why do I? Part 36. Once in a lifetime event. This was it. Tonight was the night. While my first big performance with the Wonderbolts, we were also performing with the new pop icon, Red Robin. I didn't really want to share this spotlight and do moves based on this Sallian's singing, but Gilda insisted this would be good for our image. World-class performers doing what we do best, flying with style. From what we heard, this Red Robin fellow could fly as well. Really. But I was hoping he wouldn't try to outshine me. All the bolts loaded up on the train that would take us to Canterlot. We would have flown ourselves, but Gilda insisted we rested our wings and take a train from Ponyville to Canterlot. I don't know if it was Gilda not wanting me to be in my old hometown long, or the fact we arrived rather late to the train station, but we didn't stay more than 5 minutes in the stations as we were shuffled onto the train before any paparazzi could gawk at us. On the train, I looked solemnly out the window. You'd think I'd be excited for one of our first big shows, but I seemed a bit peeved about this Red Robin fellow we would have to perform with. I have talked to Gilda about this numerous times, but it seemed she wasn't interested in hearing what I had to say. That maroon fly asshat already got to Gilda before I did, and whatever he said seemed to convince her that this would be a good idea. I sat near Spitfire and Soren, who were busy discussing the event and going over our routine. Spitfire, Soren, and I were to fly in first for the first number Red Robin was performing. After our performance, Maroon Fly was supposed to have his own solo, and already that rubbed us the wrong way. Wonderbolts had to have years of experience and training before they could have their own solo performance, and the fact that this little Parasprite got one before any of us was not right at all. Still, at least I was a Wonderbolt, and I was going to be performing with the rest of them. I settled into my seat and smiled to myself. If only they could see me now. At the giant concert hall where the event was being held, there were swarms of ponies piled in to get a glimpse of this once-in-a-lifetime event. I smirked to myself knowing this was a once-in-a-lifetime event. From the music I've heard this fellow sing, he would be a has-been before he knew it. We were ushered in by large security guards and Gilda as the crowd saw us and began to cheer wildly. This made me happy that so many ponies recognized us and praised us for who we were. Although the other bolts just smiled and waved, but me, being the attention whore that I am, flew up as high as I could and waved and shouted, "Hello, Camelot!" I screamed and was met with an uproar of applause. I felt like I could fly to the top of the world right now. "You all ready for a show?" I screamed even louder. They all cheered back, and I blew them kisses before I felt a rather cold, sharp talon on my shoulder. I felt her beak very gently graze my ear as she spoke. "Let's save the show for later, eh, Dash?" I looked down and saw Soren and Spitfire giving me a rather bitter look. My jaw dropped, and I felt my good mood melt off of me. It was fun while it lasted. I looked back at Gilda, and then back to the ground where I slowly floated down. I landed back next to Soren and Spitfire before Spitfire narrowed her eyes a bit. "You don't like the fact that we're sharing a show with a singer, so why'd you have to go do that?" she asked as we were led to our rooms to get ready and prep up. My jaw dropped. I couldn't believe she was bringing this up. "Spitfire, what happened to you? You would have been right up there with me if—" "Times have changed, Rainbow Dash." She immediately cut me off. "Look, I'm not mad, but just keep in mind next time what you're doing." Her and Soren made their way to our room first, and I held back and waited for them to leave. What the heck was that about? I asked myself. They would have loved to eaten up the audience's attention before. What happened? This would be another thing I would have to discuss with Gilda. I entered the room with them, and they were already in their jumpsuits getting ready. I climbed into mine. I had only worn it a few times before, and each time I had to break into it more and more. This time it felt comfortable, but I wasn't used to such a tight-fitting outfit, I guess. Soren and Spitfire were stretching up as I trotted over to them. "Look, I'm sorry," I said to them quietly. My ears were lowering as I could see them both look over to me. "You just have no idea how much I wanted this, and now I finally have it." "We get it, Rainbow Dash," says Soren. "You should be happier in the bolts. You've earned it. It's really not all it seems. Most of the time, we're just backup dancers nowadays," he said, adjusting his suit more. I forgot what his voice sounded like, so I'm just, he said, adjusting his suit more. I trotted over to a couch and sat down on it. "I don't understand. You guys are the best of the best. We are the best of the best," I protested. I could see Soren and Spitfire getting a little bit upset over what I was saying because their ears were lowering as well. I lowered my tone and sighed. I just don't feel like it's fair Gilda is making us do shows with other singers. I just don't get it." I scratched my head with my hoof. It doesn't seem right. Spitfire sat down next to me. "She thinks she's helping us by having us perform with other ponies, but I feel like we're just selling out." I nodded. "Exactly. We aren't sellouts. We're the Wonderbolts." I stood up now, smiling. "We can give these ponies a show tonight. Yeah, but we need to have more pride in ourselves now. As famous as Red Robin is, he doesn't deserve to perform with us," I said to them. Spitfire and Soren seemed to perk up when I tried to motivate them, and they stood up and laughed with me. "What would we do without you, Rainbow Dash?" asked Spitfire as she trotted over to the door with Soren. I followed them and made my way out to the back of the stage, where I could see the performance was already starting. Red Robin was dancing on stage with a few other backup ponies as he sang some nonsense song. I couldn't really hear the lyrics, as the cheers from the crowd were too exciting. I remember Gilda saying that Red Robin would give us a signal when he wanted us to start flying, and each of us took a stance, awaiting his signal. We were to fly at top speeds when he did it, and it would be when he raises one of his forelegs in the air. We each put our goggles on and felt our muscles in our legs and wings tense as we prepared to take off. The song went on before Red Robin did a spin, then lifted his forearm in the air and immediately dropped it. That was our signal. Soren, Spitfire, and I propelled ourselves off the ground into the air as we rose up behind him, leaving trails of our colors behind us. The crowd went wild at this dual performance as we flew around them in the air, painting our signature moves up in the sky. Something about performing with the Wonderbolts made me feel almost high. It was an ecstasy to be able to fly with the world's greatest flyers and make other ponies cheer. It seemed we would be the stars of this performance after all as we took to the skies. I turned to Spitfire first, then Soren, giving them each a smile. I flew ahead of them as we were told towards the end of the song to make our way to the VIP balcony where Red Robin's most honored guests were staying. Maybe Princess Luna and Celestia were one of them. And my girls. I thrilled at the thought as I zoomed faster and faster, eager to see my old friends and make them proud. It didn't cross my mind that she might be there until it was too late. Once I zoomed inches away from the VIP, I was right about seeing my girls as they cheered wildly for me, screaming my name. I flashed them all big grins before a pair of cyan blue eyes literally stunned me where I flew. My wings tensed up and I froze midair as the two of us locked eyes. All I could see was pure shock on her face as both of our jaws hung open and the cheering from the VIP booth stopped.